welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. Today, we are going to have a really interesting conversation with Dr. Uma Naidoo. And Dr. Naidoo has been called a triple threat. She is a Harvard trained psychiatrist. She's also a certified nutritionist, and she is a chef, a professional chef, which I love that you're all those things. But I wanted to start the conversation with, could you explain what a nutritional psychiatrist is?
Thanks, Colleen. Thank you both for having me. It's a great question. This is a more newer field in psychiatry, which is why people haven't heard about nutritional psychiatry. And what it is the use of healthy whole foods and nutrients to improve your brain functioning, your brain health, along with any other form of treatment that you might be taking. So it doesn't mean that you have to give up a medication or very important forms of psychotherapy that exist, but it works alongside these to allow people more options or more tools in their toolkit, as I like to say.
Yeah, your book addresses so many mental health issues and how the foods are related to that. And I know your first chapter you talk about the gut brain romance. Can you talk a little bit about what the gut brain romance is?
I'm happy to, and thanks, Bridget. So, I chose to use that topic for the chapter to help convey the actual message of the science behind it. You see, the gut and brain are two separate organs, far apart in the body, but they arise from the exact same cells in the human embryo. And then they divide apart and they form these two organs, and then they remain connected throughout life anatomically by the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve. I like to call it a two-way text messaging system, kind of like think of teenagers always messaging each other. Similarly, the gut and brain are always in contact, and the messaging is chemical in nature. And one of the things are the neurotransmitters and the sort of messaging around chemicals. Now, like with the romance, there are good days and bad days. So to convey that food impacts this gut-brain ecosystem, I like to explain it as, days that we're having healthier meals and we're, staying on the healthy side of how we eat and choosing those salads and healthy fats and clean proteins. It's a good day for the gut-brain romance because the gut microbes, there are trillions of them down there. They interact with the food that we eat. And when we eat healthy foods, they thrive, they do well, and they are happy. So it's almost like a good food also means a good mood or less anxiety. When they thrive, the breakdown products are things like short chain fatty acids, which are good for our gut and they're good for our brain. But as with, bad days in a romance, the days that we kind of checking into the fast food lane and eating, donuts for breakfast and, candy bars throughout the day, the foods that we know are not our go-to healthy foods, the bad microbes in the gut thrive. And when they thrive, they cause problems. They cause more inflammation. They slowly, over time, start damaging the very delicate lining of the gut and ultimately lead to inflammation and things like dysbiosis or what people often call leaky gut over time. So that actually conveys that the gut-brain romance there's the science behind how this ecosystem works, and it guides people toward understanding, generally the choices of food we should go toward. No one is perfect. We all eat a varied diet, but for the most part, I like people to try to think of like the 80-20 rule and moving towards better choices when we can.
Your book is so fascinating. We really recommend that the listeners take a look at this as your brain on
Thank you.
food. One of the things you're very specific about here is a certain mental health concern, and here are some
Yeah.
foods that might benefit along, like you said, with therapy and medication. A lot of women in our demographic suffer from anxiety and depression, whether it be menopausal related or just something
Yeah.
that we start to have or have struggled with. For myself, I've struggled
Mhm.
with it my whole life. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
thought this would be a great place to start with what types of nutrients should we be putting in our body to help ease some of that anxiety?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. To start with, it's not surprising that anxiety is the most common condition in the United States. Often, from even recent demographics, about 3 times more common than depression, but often these conditions go together. So, someone who has some depression may also have a touch of anxiety, or vice versa. So, important to understand that one of the things we want to be careful about is not to be vigilant of the foods we may be eating, which may be driving anxiety. And one of those is the standard American diet. It's called SAD, or the Western diet, for a reason, because it's kind of those unhealthy fried foods, a lot of the starches, not the complex carbohydrates, but more of the simple carbs. The donuts, the candy, just lots of pasta without any sort of vegetables or fiber involved. Then there's caffeine, which, there's a guidance around caffeine because coffee on its own has a lot of plant polyphenols, but caffeine can be very problematic for people with anxiety. The studies say that less than about 400 milligrams a day, usually tolerable. But in anxiety, I say to people, even if you have a sip and you feel jittery or uncomfortable, then it's not for you. Alcohol is another one which can actually ramp up anxiety, even though people say, let me have a glass of wine to calm my nerves at the end of the day. That may be true in the moment, but unfortunately, it has a rebound effect if you're using it to calm yourself down. Another one that we have to be worried about is gluten, because it's specific to some individuals, not everyone. So with individuals with anxiety, if we kind of struggling around a nutritional psychiatry plan and they may be not getting better, I do look at gluten as a short-term elimination to see if it may be problematic for them. And the big one is artificial sweetness, which many people don't realize. So some of the things to be wary of is, say you are struggling with, having a lot of soda, but you move towards a diet soda. The diet soda may actually be driving your anxiety. So just be careful about the choices you make when you have these symptoms. But the good news is there are foods you can lean into. And some of them you may have heard before, but we don't actually realize that these are foods that impact our brain health. So fiber-rich foods. Now, fiber is something that most Americans don't pay attention to, but fiber is your friend when you have anxiety. And the foods that you'll find these in are really plant foods, so vegetables, fruit, beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, healthy whole grains. You don't unfortunately find it in animal products. So it's important to add those plant foods in, because the fiber and the different diversity of plant polyphenols are critical for anxiety. Then you have the fermented foods, your, kombucha, miso, tempeh, fermented foods, super helpful for anxiety because they help your gut health. You can include tryptophan from things like chickpeas or even turkey, which are helpful for anxiety. Spices like turmeric with a pinch of black pepper, very helpful if you don't cook with it. Try it on roasted vegetables, or add a little quarter teaspoon or half a teaspoon to a soup, a smoothie, or even a tea to start trying it out. Things like passion flower tea, chamomile tea are very helpful. And then, make sure to check with your doctor that you're not deficient in things like magnesium or certain vitamins, because things like vitamin D, super helpful for anxiety.
I just wanted to follow up on the magnesium that you just said. What type of magnesium, like if you're going to supplement magnesium, there's several different types. Which one should we be looking at?
So let me answer it this way. So people often ask me about supplementing, and the few things I would guide you around magnesium is the following. Speak to your doctor, because magnesium is very powerful. It's something that many of us may be deficient in, but it's important to test this and ask your doctor to test it. The regular blood tests do show a level, but they're not always that accurate. So speak to your doctor about checking your red blood cell magnesium, and he or she or your doctor will know what that means, and that gives you a slightly more accurate reading. The reason it's important not to over supplement magnesium is it can also cause something like an abnormal heart rhythm because it is such an important nutrient in the body. The one that is usually recommended for anxiety is magnesium bisglycinate. So it's one of the ones that people think about for anxiety, and important to get a clean supplement if you can. Look at what the ingredients are. It's worth sort of spending if you are deficient and your doctor's asking you to supplement. Either they'll write you a prescription to get it at the pharmacy, or you can get something over the counter. But all I'm saying is to get their guidance, because although it's important for us to get the magnesium bisglycinate, it's also important to check your level and not overdo it because you need it for anxiety. You want your level to be normal, but you also don't want to tip the scale in terms of safety of things like your heart rhythm and things like that.
Well, another point with midlife, which I love that you touch on so many things that midlife women have difficulty with during menopause. Another one is insomnia. And you have something in there about insomnia. Can you share a little bit of some of the things that might help with insomnia?
I always start off with the boring stuff, which is, what we call sleep hygiene. And you may have heard it from a sleep doctor before, but it's so important to not do your supermarketing late in the evening, although, when one works, sometimes that's the only time you get, or, you're shopping at that time, because those bright lights actually overly activate your system. And so these are just little tips around your sleep and circadian rhythm, and your circadian rhythm is your internal body clock. So the thing that gets thrown off when there's a daylight savings time and that type of stuff. So you want to avoid those bright lights. You want to start to calm your body down early in the evening that you're getting ready to sleep. Shut your phone off maybe an hour before bedtime. Not be watching your favorite show at that time, because those actually impact our brain and our ability to rest and go to sleep restfully. Another thing is, if you enjoy red wine or you enjoy a glass of wine for dinner, don't be leaning on that to help you sleep. Because if that's what you're using to help you is, calm down or feel sleepy, it actually over time starts to reverse the action and disrupts your sleep architecture, so it can be a problem. Drink coffee if you do early in the day, or caffeinated beverages, or even some teas. But things that you can tap into are melatonin-rich foods. So rather than taking a supplement, you can get melatonin from things like eggs and some other foods. I always say to people, flip your breakfast for dinner. So, make an omelet for dinner, rich in melatonin, add in some veggies, and I list the different foods rich in melatonin in the book. Things like chickpeas can be helpful for that as well. So, and a fruit juice made from tart cherries. So either tart cherries themselves, which you do get fresh or frozen in some parts of the country, or the juices, which you actually do find in certain stores. Just watch for the sugar content because you don't want added sugars, actually have been shown to help sleep and insomnia. So those are some things that are not usually what we talk about in relation to sleep, but I think that these are things someone can easily just tap into to get your body ready for sleep. Chamomile tea, also super helpful. Like I said, the tart cherry juice. Another one is barley grass powder. A lot of natural things that you can find without having to necessarily take a supplement. Nothing against taking a supplement, but you can always try foods first. And the last one is the omega-3 fatty acids. So, things like your fatty fish, you can add that or have that as a dinner as well. And, do it in a way that you are having your dinner, but you're having it early in the evening and then getting your body ready for rest.
For someone who doesn't enjoy fish and they need to get their omega-3s, because we know that's important, what would you recommend?
So a lot of people either don't consume fish or they're vegetarian. And you can get, there are short chain omega-3s that are available from things like walnuts, hemp seeds, chia seeds. The conversion of the short chain ALAs are not as efficient as the types of omega-3s found in seafood, but you can supplement. There's a vegan supplement called an algal oil supplement, because you also get the omega-3s in sea algae and seaweed. So those are things that you can actually obtain and be able to supplement your omega-3s if you don't consume fish, or if you are if your philosophy is not to consume any animal or seafood, then you wouldn't want to take an omega-3 supplement. But if you just simply don't like the taste of fish, you can get a pretty good quality omega-3 supplement available to take to make up for the omega-3s.
Also, I have a love-hate relationship, as we were talking about relationships in the beginning of the conversation, with sugar. And I think I had this aha moment when you explained that 4 grams of sugar equals 1 teaspoon. I've never thought about it in those terms. Can you talk about sugar and its relationship to our mental health and our physical health as well?
So thank you for asking that question, because I think many of us in the US are confused by food labels. And that's why I teach this to as many people as I can, because we cook all our recipes. If you ever opened a book published in the US, all our recipes are written in pounds and ounces and teaspoons, or tablespoons, but our food labels are in grams. So people don't really understand how many grams that is. So 4 grams is 1 teaspoon of sugar. It's a guideline. So if you look at, say, a fruited yogurt, people hear me say that if you eat dairy, a probiotic-rich plain yogurt is great, but they hear blueberries, they hear yogurt, and they think fruited yogurt. It's not a bad choice. The problem is it has a ton of added sugars, can be up to 8 teaspoons in a half a cup. But if you know that conversion, you know to divide the number of grams of sugar or added sugars. Unfortunately, sugar doesn't just affect our waistline or impact us in terms of a family history of type 2 diabetes. It affects our brain. And over time, studies have even shown that you can get shrinking of neurons. It can affect your cognitive health. It really affects the functioning, because one of the things that sugar does is it causes inflammation in our body, starting in the gut, which then, because the gut and brain are connected, impacts the brain over time. But here's the thing, there is hope for us, right? Because the power is at the end of our fork. So, something in the US, so many of our foods have high fructose corn syrup. So many of our foods are sweetened. If you've ever had relatives or friends or from overseas, they'll often say our food is sweet. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, even the savory food. So things like salad dressings, our store-bought pasta sauces, ketchup, all actually contain sugar. They're now healthier versions that will actually be labeled as less sugar and things like that. But you often consuming sugar when you don't realize it, which set up our taste buds for these cravings. And the moment that, if you've ever had a box of chocolates at home, someone gifted it to you and you think, well, I'll open it on my birthday. And then when you have the one chocolate, you want 2 more. And then the cycle starts. It's because the sugar taps into our cravings. So, trying to find ways to manage that over time become important. It's not easy. It's not easy for people to do it, but finding healthy replacements is one way to do it.
Yeah, that is a tough one for me too. Each chapter of your book, you have a great cheat sheet in the back for every chapter, for every issue that you address in the book. And it comes up, it seems like that the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet seem to be 2 that really help with different issues. Can you talk about the Mediterranean and the DASH diet and why those are better choices?
The Mediterranean diet, is rich in plant foods, fiber, healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, legumes like chickpeas and lentils, as poultry, seafood, which we need. And so it really taps into something that we we want people to be eating those plant-rich foods, the different colors, the different textures. All of that actually helps our gut. The plant chemicals, the plant polyphenols in these different bright-colored vegetables actually interact with the gut microbes and make for a positive effect. So they become important. The DASH diet was originally designed to help hypertension, but again, it has healthy foods in it. Now, the way I like to think about it is not everyone eats the same thing. So someone from a different culture may not really eat the same foods as in the Mediterranean region. But how do you take the principles of that and adapt it to whoever's in front of you? For my Asian patients, I will talk about a Mediterranean diet, and I'll talk about veggies like bok choy, green leafy vegetables that you can find in the supermarket, but something that he or she may be more familiar with cooking. I'll bring in chickpeas and how to use that not just in hummus, but in, say, an Indian curry, so that someone who is from that culture understands it. But I think for the basic premise and message of it is healthy whole foods. Eat the orange, skip the store-bought orange juice. And that's really what those, if you think about it, that's really what those diets are trying to teach us. Staying away from the processed, ultra-processed foods, those added sugars, the fried foods, the wrong types of fats, the fats that are, hydrogenated, or the trans fats. This is really the principle that these diets are talking about. They are focusing us on the healthy versions of foods, and you don't see processed snacks in those diets. You don't see a bag of chips, even if it's a low fat something or sugar free, neither of which are healthy. But you just see whole foods as your choices.
What
And
about I'm sorry. I was just say, this Western diet that so many of us were raised on. It's
Yes.
what advice would you give to someone that really wants to make those changes? And like you said, cravings are so difficult to deal with. Are there any small steps you can start to become healthier?
Of course. So I think it's firstly, it's a challenge for any one of us. So let's just start there. But yes, there's some tips. So what I ask people to do is tell me what your biggest issue is right now. And if it is eating those chocolates at night or the ice cream, then start with, can I create a small kitchen hack, culinary hack that can make that easier for me? So for people who say have to have ice cream every single night, I have a recipe in my book for banana ice cream made from bananas. You can make a chocolate flavor with with either dark chocolate or a cacao powder. Actually, both of those ingredients are good for your brain. So it's a healthy option that, I don't want you to eat the whole bowl of it, but it helps you switch from that processed ice cream every night to a healthier version. I tell people to sometimes get frozen blueberries. Frozen wild blueberries have twice the amount of antioxidants. Or even if they buy some grapes, freeze them, because it's kind of a nice little thing to pop in your mouth, pick a few, and the sweet taste kind of helps you with the natural flavor of fruit just to get over that craving for the candy bar or something you're looking for. If it's something else like a salty snack, so you have to have movie theater butter popcorn every day, or you have to have a bag of salty chips. Everyone has a different craving, right? For that, I'll teach people a simple recipe. You can do it literally in an air fryer, toaster oven, or your oven. Make a whole sheet tray for your family, a sheet pan of kale or spinach, fresh from the supermarket. Drizzle some avocado oil and some spices you like, or some flavorings, and crisp them up. You can grate on a little bit of Parmesan cheese on it if you consume cheese. There are even non-dairy versions now, and make it a crunchy snack. Bake it and eat it hot with your family, because that will take off that edge for that crunchy, salty snack you're looking for. Having on hand, being prepared is also part of it. If we walk into our kitchen and we have cookies and we have donuts and we have candy bars and we have processed snacks and juices and things that if you're hungry, or you're working from home, or you're on a podcast, you're going to reach for a snack straight after. if you don't have something that is a better version, and a little bit of step away from the standard American diet, then those are the choices you're going to go for. You're going to eat the cookie. So I think environment is very important. So another step, besides identifying your biggest issue and starting there, so small step, but making that one change at a time. Another is environment, switching out, having a bowl of fruit, having a bowl of clementines on the table, having, blueberries in the fridge, having lots of healthy nuts and seeds around, because they're satiating, they're healthy fats, and you just have, a little quarter cup of some almonds, and that can actually help you get over those hunger pangs. An apple, just an apple with some nuts is another way. So if you have those choices in front of you, I know this for myself. Weeks that I'm so busy, I don't get to do my supermarketing, or just return from a trip. If I don't have something healthy in my kitchen, guess what? I either order something that's quick, and it's just not the best choice for me. And I know that, but so planning becomes so important. But small steps and realizing it's a marathon and not a sprint, having grace with yourself because it's not easy for us, and doing it slowly, doing it in a way that you can achieve your goal and achieve that habit change over time.
I feel like you've been in my kitchen with the what not. It's not what not to wear. It's like what not to eat. It's just my entire
which
kitchen.
you have in her book. She has the pantry, like, how to stock your, it's great in the back, a great index on
You
what
do
to
have so much information,
so much
and recipes.
yes, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Another,
And it's meant to be flexible and meant to be attainable for people. An egg scramble. If you consume eggs, you can make them in a mug if you're rushing to work. You can make them at work if you need to. It's just meant to make it easy for someone to have an actual food versus a processed version of it. So,
and people really do go quickly. Like they don't have time to sit there, and like meal prepping helps a lot of people too. If you spend Sunday meal prepping. But another thing that you talk about, which I think is really important, is that you should pay attention to your body intelligence. And when you eat something, make note of how you feel maybe an hour or two after. Can you talk about that as part of it as well?
I find, this is a pillar of nutritional psychiatry, and I find, Colleen, that many people will tell me about feeling very foggy in the afternoon, needing an extra cup of coffee, feeling like they have to have chocolate to perk them up, or go to the vending machine. But they don't associate it with what they just had for lunch, what they've been eating for breakfast, or even the past few days. But when I ask them, they start to make that connection. So I think the best way to explain body intelligence is if you're having, if you're feeling foggy, you're feeling I can't focus on my work today. I'm feeling jittery. I just can't settle down, or can't focus, or I'm super tired and it's in the afternoon and I need to take a nap today. Ask yourself, as one of the things, it's not the only thing, there may be something more going on which you should have checked, but ask yourself what you ate, because if you're having a simple carb laden lunch, something that's very processed, or a sandwich with sliced bread, nothing wrong with it, but it may be that those foods are really kind of causing you to be fatigued, causing you to have less energy, because they are not that high in fiber. They don't have those nutrients that our body needs. So body intelligence is asking yourself, when you have a response, a reaction, a feeling, also ask yourself, in addition to the emotional stuff, ask yourself what you ate, because it could be related to having a sugary breakfast, and you have it in the morning, you have your cereal, and you get to work, or you go to your desk at home. The next thing you're like, oh, I wish I could get the donut that's on the kitchen counter, because I'm not really satiated from my cereal. And by the afternoon, by the time it's 11 o'clock, you're ravenous, you're ready for lunch, because your body actually hasn't gotten whole nutrients. It's processing these simple carbs very quickly. Then you have that high, and then you get the sugar crash. So your body is starving of actual nutrients. Then you gobble down something for lunch. And by the afternoon, you're tired. You don't have the energy to fuel your body. So just tweaking one thing, making an exchange of a healthier option, makes a difference to being able to identify that, and then making it an easy swap.
One of the questions I think that our listeners is gonna I think one of the questions that our listeners are very curious about is the brain fog. And I know you
Yeah,
talk about some tips for helping brain fog, which a lot of
yeah.
women, including myself, we struggle with,
Hmm.
whether it's menopause or just aging. And you
Hmm.
have some great tips, whether it be like fresh peppermint and things like that. Can you talk about
Hmm.
brain fog?
Yeah, it's become, I almost feel like with the last few years, we're living through some sort of a haze cognitively. Like people are speaking to me all the time about not being able to focus, just not being able to be as productive as they were, not able to get their work done in the way that they were. And a lot of it actually comes down to brain fog. Now, some people who have survived a COVID infection, that could be part of long hauler syndrome or some of the aftermath of the actual infection. But it also could be our diet, just how we're eating. It could be inflammation producing foods that are causing this. But there's some tips. Some of my favorite, there's an antioxidant called luteolin, and there are certain foods that are rich in luteolin. And I suggest kind of bumping up these foods to help offset the brain fog. So in addition to what we talked about earlier, which is kind of cleaning up your diet, moving towards, more whole foods and less processed, ultra processed foods. A great one is fresh peppermint. Make yourself a cup of fresh peppermint tea. That's a great pick me up. Another tea that's actually more energizing is green tea. It has EGCG and L-theanine also, which really help people perk up. In fact, I suggest that to a lot of people as an early afternoon beverage rather than coffee. Other foods are hot and sweet red peppers, celery seeds, parsley, artichokes, dried Mexican oregano, spice. These foods actually all contain luteolin, and I have a list in the book. So start to include those maybe in a salad that you're having for lunch, or a few of them into a snack that you're having. Even having those little sweet peppers as an afternoon snack is a good idea. Just something that is constantly feeding your body with nutrients that will be able to help you.
And another thing that midlife women that addresses something a lot of midlife women talk about is libido. And
Yeah,
you have a thing in there about things that
yeah,
can help with libido. Can you share some of
yeah.
those with us?
Of course. So, with perimenopause and with menopause, there may be many changes that your body is going through. So some of them are physiological and hormonal, and those may need to be addressed in many different ways. But people often overlook food as something you can also lean on. Remember, it's that additional tool in your toolkit that you may not have realized you have. So there are foods that actually boost oxytocin, which often people call the hugging hormone. One of them you'll love is dark chocolate. So, it's not the dark chocolate candy buzz, but it is that dark natural chocolate. Magnesium-rich foods, things like avocado, and then a little bit of coffee, nuts like pistachios, almonds, and walnuts. Adding those to your diet, apples, pomegranates, onions, and some herbs like saffron or fenugreek. Fenugreek is often used in more hearty Middle Eastern dishes, but it certainly is something to think about. I'd like to do things like suggest to people having, polyphenol rich strawberries and dipping them in dark chocolate. Having those, almost making a smorgasbord of these foods, or that actually will help you over time to include them as snacks, and that will help you with libido. It was very important because some individuals who take psychiatric medication, some of the side effects lessen and lower libido. So it was just important to address this. And some things to be aware of, some of the non-stick cookware that we use contains something called PFOA. And so just switching to stainless steel cookware or even cast iron cookware, becomes even an important, and I have that in chapter 11 of the book, just important tweaks to your overall kind of, like I said, you look at your environment and you maybe think of time over time to clean out the cookie cabinet. In a similar way, look at your pots and pans. And that's why I describe, my favorite cookware. And, some of these are more pricey. So even if you get one that you start with, it's a way to start moving from the very well advertised and marketed non-stick types that contain these harmful things. Now, some of the newer brands are paying attention to things like PFOA and those chemicals. So, there are more choices now.
Your book is so thorough, and we recommend that our listeners get This Is Your Brain on Food. Dr. Naidoo, thank you so much. I know you're very busy, so we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and our listeners. And so many suggestions in the book, especially spices, which I don't think people really take advantage of, but you
True.
go in depth about some great spices. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Colleen and Bridget. It was really lovely to talk to you both, and I hope we can catch up again soon.